This is the story of Sakita Kuki, a 20-year-old manga assistant who falls in love with the woman he works with. He works as an assistant to Akanabe Akira, a mangaka who has captured his heart and become his partner. It all began when Sakita decided to join Akanobian and become her assistant. He is a kind and shy guy, but aside from that, he is very talented at drawing backgrounds. He is persistent and always immersed in the art of manga drawing. One day, he had an idea. He wanted his manga to start with the moment the female character takes off her underwear. However, he couldn't stop imagining. Regarding the scene where Akanabe-san takes off her underwear right then, this made him feel anxious. Fortunately, he managed to regain his composure and escape the distraction. He began to focus on the background that he loved. After completing the drawings, he immediately sent them to Akanabe and asked for her feedback. She was so impressed and captivated by Sakita's paintings that she couldn't help but praise him. However, this admiration turned out to be a real challenge for Sakita. He calls it his destructive power. When praising Sakita's paintings, Akanabe-san rarely offered ordinary compliments, but instead always used exaggerated praise. As a result, every compliment from Akanabe made him feel very embarrassed and pressured. He fully understood that Akanabe was 4 years older than him, but for him, having a date with this beautiful woman wasn't that important. From Sakita's perspective, Akanabe-san is the author of Crimson Witch, a work he had admired long before his date with her. He approached her and expressed his desire to become her assistant. He wasn't bothered that Akanabe might be quite strict, as his determination to work with her as his manga assistant remained unchanged. All this trouble started here. Akanabe-san was very proud of Sakita's paintings, and every time this happened, Sakita would blush and feel embarrassed. This made him feel overjoyed and his heart beat faster. Whenever this moment comes, Sakita struggles with his emotions and rarely acknowledges them. He tries to tell himself that his feelings are not love. He assured them that those feelings were merely a sign of respect between the manga artist and his assistant. Because these feelings were distracting him, he left the room and excused himself to use the restroom. In the restroom, he had to confront his emotions and thoughts with difficulty. He took a deep breath and tried to regulate his feelings. Once things settled down, he calmed down, and ready to return to the room to continue working. Upon entering the room, he saw Akanabe-san standing there, making a cup of coffee. Akanabe-san glanced at him with her usual cold, penetrating gaze. Suddenly, she asked a question that left Sakita bewildered. "Do you have any feelings for me?" This question left Sakita speechless for a moment. He still hasn't admitted his feelings. For Akanabe-san, therefore, he explained that he greatly respects her and greatly admires her manga. Without hesitation, she immediately asked him out on a date. This unexpected confession left Sakita speechless, feeling like he'd been caught red-handed. Older brother, feeling ashamed, as if all the flowers are rushing in on our side. However, after some careful consideration, he realized his true feelings for Akanabe and also revealed again with her. A broad smile on Akanabe's face. She felt joyful and happy. Ultimately, this was just the beginning of a love story between a manga assistant and a manga fan. And his boss. Akanabe-sensei has a daily routine. She wakes up at 7 a.m., starts her day by brewing a cup of coffee, then refreshes her morning with a cigarette and uses the ventilation fan. After completing her morning routine, she had breakfast and prepared to go to work at 9 a.m. Meanwhile, Sakita stood by the roadside scrolling through his phone, waiting for his boss. Although there were still 40 minutes until their scheduled work meeting, he couldn't contain his excitement and arrived early despite the cold weather. Akanabe had been getting ready since around 4 in the morning. When she saw Sakita through the window, she decided to come down and meet him in person to show their concern. After a brief conversation, they went into Akanabe's house together. In the cozy morning air, the couple immersed themselves in their manga project. Suddenly, Akanabe-sensei confessed to Sakita that she had woken up early around 4 a.m., knowing he would be coming. This confession flustered Sakita, his heart racing as he felt his face flush. He began to think that perhaps they both shared similar feelings. Akanabe-sensei gently traced her fingers along Sakita's cheek and grasped it, making him even more embarrassed. Under her gaze, he could hear his heart pounding, and when he looked back at her, Akanabe-sensei whispered, suggesting he could arrive earlier than usual so they could spend more time together. Noticing Sakita's embarrassment, Akanabe-sensei asked why he felt that way. He shyly covered his mouth and admitted that her actions and words had embarrassed him. Akanabe-sensei paused for a moment. She felt pleased to know that Sakita cared about her so much, although her facial expression didn't fully convey it. In that moment, she moved closer and expressed her desire to kiss him. Sakita was both aware of it and stunned. He started to speak but stammered, struggling to utter a word as Akanabe leaned closer to his face. He wanted to say that he wanted to kiss her too, but he was afraid he couldn't bear the embarrassment. While he was trying to finish his sentence, she turned away and told him to keep things professional, saying it was important to maintain a clear line between personal and work life. She realized that if they blurred these lines, it will never end. Akanabe reminded Sakita to stop and not draw pornographic scenes. This request left Sakita standing there. He felt very embarrassed, but he still firmly refused, standing up and replying confidently. He knew he was a little shy, but this kind of thing wouldn't make him look any more professional. Akanabe-sensei remained seated at the table, watching him calmly. She understood what he was saying, but she was also sure that when they were dating, there might be times when he imagined her as inspiration for inappropriate scenes in manga. Sakita immediately understood her meaning. This reasoning only made him feel more embarrassed, as his face was now as red as a tomato. Clearly, he had just had a sudden thought about a steamy scene involving Akanabe-san. Seeing this, Akanabe-sensei quickly grasped the situation and offered advice. She remained calm and composed, telling him he didn't need to force himself to draw erotic scenes. Recalling his embarrassment at the time, she comforted him, saying that if he truly wanted to, he could experience it firsthand with her in the future. Akanabe's words surprised and embarrassed Sakita so much that he was speechless for a moment. As they worked together to complete the project, the sound of pencils scratching on paper created a bond between Akanabe and Sakita. Currently, Sakita is in a state of urgency, trying his best to complete his part for the character named Iron. This character represents a great deal about his sensei, as she is a fast worker, brave, strong, and resilient like a castle. All of those things explain the name. After struggling with his task for a while, Sakita finally finished on time, as Akanabe had expected. Sakita couldn't tell if their break time was over yet, as the project wasn't finished and needed to be submitted tomorrow. Akanabe told his assistant to go home and regretted asking him to work overtime today. However, Sakita firmly refused to let his girlfriend work alone, feeling guilty about the delay he had caused. With unwavering determination, he resolved to help Akanabe complete the project. Akanabe explained that the real reason for the delay was a decision to change half of the story, which necessitated rushing to finish everything. Sakita immediately expressed his belief that the current version of the story was an improvement, and assured her that readers would appreciate it. However, he remained determined to help his girlfriend. He promised to do his best to paint each panel, helping to complete the project. Despite his seemingly humble appearance, he was far more resilient than others might think. His resolve never wavered, and he always radiated positive energy, which made Akanabe love him even more. As the clock struck midnight, they finally overcame all obstacles and completed the project. Akanabe stretched. Sakita felt tired and exhausted. Akanabe suggested that Sakita call a taxi home and take care of herself. She went into the bedroom and lay down, quickly falling asleep. Sakita, who was watching her from a distance, he moved closer and gently placed his hand on hers, sharing his warmth. After a long day, he understood how tired she must be. However, his presence woke her up. She opened her eyes and felt full of energy and joy. She longed to be embraced. She sweetly invited her shy boyfriend into bed with her, but he hesitated because he wasn't ready for such intimacy. Akanabe felt a little disappointed, but she understood his current situation. Akanabe realized there was no need to rush their relationship. Instead, she decided to continue her work. She said that Sakita's love gave her 1,000,000 times more strength than sleeping. The next day, it was time to submit their manga scripts or projects to the editor. Akanabe-sensei entered the building and headed towards the publishing company to meet Kakami Haruka, her professional manga editor. Kakami-san is actually 7 years older than her. Although Kakami is older, Akanabe looks younger and is shorter than Akanabe. When she met Kakami, she was surprised to be asked why she submitted her work later than usual this time, as this was unusual. Furthermore, Kakami noticed a distinct change in the conversation compared to their previous discussions. When Kakami expressed her concern, Akanabe quickly replied that she had a boyfriend. This revelation surprised Kakami, as she had never seen Akanabe as someone who cared about romantic relationships. Akanabe said that every time she sees him, she can't help but add more details and psychological descriptions of the characters, but she's sure that the current manga is much more interesting than the previous version. As Sakita said last night, this made Kakami feel a little uncomfortable, as she felt Akanabe should inform and consult her about any changes to the story. However, despite the conflict, Kakami felt happy for Akanabe, because she realized that Akanabe had changed a lot, for the better. At this point, Akanabe asked Kakami how to express love to a boyfriend without making him feel embarrassed. However, Kakami couldn't answer that question because she had no experience in love and relationships. Despite this, they focused back on their work, so they could release the manga soon. Time flew by, day after day, week after week, and they completed the work on time. Both continued working in their respective workspaces. Akanabe and Sakita took some time to relax before preparing for their next project. While relaxing, Akanabe invited Sakura to visit her home the following weekend. Sakura felt embarrassed because the work was done, but he didn't understand why he had to visit her so soon. Sakura hadn't fully realized yet that they were officially in a relationship. Akanabe clarified his invitation. She said she wanted Sakura to visit her as a boyfriend, not just as a manga assistant. Sakura was taken aback by the idea of having to play the boyfriend. He wondered what he should wear the next day, or even how he should address Akanabe. He usually called her sensei, but now he realized that wasn't appropriate in this relationship. This new relationship made him feel awkward, as it was also his first time taking on this role. In the middle of the night, Sakura decided to call Akanabe. Sakura expressed his anxiety about what to call his girlfriend. However, Akanabe said that nicknames weren't a big deal. She wasn't too worried about a sweet nickname, and she would feel comfortable with any name as long as it came from her boyfriend. This confession made Sakura feel extremely embarrassed, which was evident in his flushed face. Meanwhile, Akanabe was wandering around the convenience store late at night, holding the phone close to your ear. Continue the conversation with Sakura. She frankly told him that she would buy condoms for their plan tomorrow. She also expressed her hesitation about which one to buy. Her words surprised Sakura. He felt unprepared for this, thinking they had only just started dating. He immediately reprimanded Akanabe, muttering that it was too soon. He asked her not to buy them, worried that other guys would notice if she bought protection. He decided to buy them himself, even though he wasn't sure when he'd use them. He said it couldn't be tomorrow. He just wanted them both to enjoy quality time together. Akanabe realized that. Sakura wanted her all to himself, so she replied that Sakura didn't need to worry too much, because she belonged only to him. Those words left Sakura speechless, confused, and embarrassed. Finally, the day they had both been waiting for arrived, bringing with it a wonderful weekend and fresh air. Sakura walked to his girlfriend's house, but when we arrived, he was greeted by a woman who opened the door with an annoyed expression. She is Akanabe-san, with a gloomy atmosphere surrounding her. Sakura immediately felt bad, thinking that his appearance had ruined Akanabe's mood. But he was wrong, because the reason for her grumpy expression was that the editor had asked her to finish the magazine cover quickly, while she still has a lot of work to do. She asked Sakura to stay in another room. She worried that if they were in the same space, she would be distracted and unable to concentrate on work. When Akanabe left, Sakura sat down and suddenly felt annoyed, having missed the opportunity to call her by a proper nickname. He had been too focused on Akanabe's previous expression, making him feel as if she wanted to devour the whole world. Feeling restless, he got up and wandered around the kitchen, trying to think of a way to help his girlfriend feel better after a stressful day at work. After some thought, he came up with a brilliant idea. Since he was already in the kitchen, he decided to prepare lunch for her. It was almost 2 p.m. when Akanabe realized she had been so engrossed in her work that she had nearly lost track of time, having only just finished her task. She quickly sent the magazine cover to the editor. At this moment, she also felt tired and a little guilty for neglecting Sakura for so long. Slowly, she walked into the kitchen, drawn in by the delicious aroma of food. She was surprised to see her boyfriend standing at the table, setting out lunch for her. This thoughtful gesture deeply moved her, far exceeding her expectations of him. She walked closer and hugged him from behind. The unexpected hug overwhelmed Sakura. He felt the warmth of her body and the pleasant scent, while a feeling of pleasure welled up inside him, making his heart beat faster. When Akanabe looked at the dining table, she noticed that Sakura had prepared a hamburger steak for her. The scene was so heartwarming that she couldn't help but praise him profusely. It left him speechless for a moment. After finishing her meal, Akanabe couldn't be happier with the food. She really enjoyed it. While they were both washing dishes, she asked Sakura to call her by her last name, a request stemming from memory. When she went into the kitchen and heard him mumble her last name, that's why she wants this request to come true. This unexpected moment left Sakura bewildered. When their meal was over, they both felt unsure of what to do next, because this is the first date at home. Neither of them had any clear plans for the occasion. After a moment of thought, Akanabe suggested watching a movie together. Without a moment's hesitation, Sakura agreed and let her choose the movie. Meanwhile, Sakura chose a movie that had similarities to her manga. From the characters' personalities to the plot, he was surprised to find that the film was almost identical to his teacher's manga. Akanabe, realizing this, admitted that she chose this film because she understood how much he loved her manga. And this movie has a very similar plot. This movie is really very similar to her manga. This made Sakura blush and feel even more embarrassed. However, instead of being overwhelmed by shame, Sakura responded with a genuine smile and admitted that he really enjoyed it. Akanabe, swept away by this moment, suddenly I felt compelled to take another step forward. She leaned over and slowly pushed Sakura back onto the sofa. Her gaze was fixed intently on his eyes, as if she were about to kiss him passionately. However, the characters on screen unexpectedly interrupted the atmosphere. This brought them both back to reality, making them realize it was still too early for such intimate gestures. Sakura, feeling confused and bewildered, had difficulty concentrating on the film afterward. I ended up having to ask for the movie title so I could watch it again at home later. As time went on, they gradually became more comfortable with each other. But soon it was time for their first outdoor date. Sakita seemed to have prepared quite thoroughly for the occasion. They both walked along the street towards their agreed meeting place. Sakita unexpectedly encountered two boys inappropriately flirting with a girl. He was surprised to realize that the girl was his sensei. Akanabe showed no fear, standing firm, and mocked the two boys who were bothering her. When they saw Sakita arrive, she immediately hugged him, signaled to the boys that she already has a boyfriend. Even after the two boys left, they continued to insult Sakita, saying that he was just an ordinary person. As they passed him, they even mocked him, saying that he and Akanabe weren't a good match. This comment made Sakita begin to doubt himself and think a lot about the situation. Sensing his mood, Akanabe immediately asked if he was all right in a somber tone. Sakita confessed to Akanabe that he had let the two boys' words affect him, but he quickly reassured her that it wouldn't deter him. He was determined to maintain a cheerful attitude when he was with her, despite all the uncertainties, because he knew he was the one Akanabe loved most. Trying to stay calm and in a good mood, he gently patted his cheeks to clear his head, knowing Akanabe wouldn't be happy to see him upset. After hearing his worries and to ease their moods, Akanabe invited him to a special place to lift their spirits before they decided to go out for a meal. Akanabe plans to buy matching outfits for the two of them. When choosing clothes together, she unintentionally holding a dress. It reminded her of a time when her friends told her that the dress didn't suit her. She felt uncomfortable thinking about that moment. However, Sakita responded with words of comfort, loudly complimenting her on how wonderful and beautiful she looked in the dress. The enthusiasm on his face was evident as he called her cute. It surprised her, but it also boosted her confidence. The compliment brought her joy, making her smile softly as she expressed her happiness. After spending some time shopping together, they both felt happier and closer. They both continued their stroll, feeling excited about finding delicious food and enjoying quality time together on the date. Since Sakita had some free time, he decided to visit his girlfriend's house. However, when he arrived, he discovered that Akanabe had a guest, a close friend from art school, Yao Sakura. Yao stood there, her cold gaze fixed on Sakita. She introduced herself with a captivating personality, strong, decisive, and bold, yet also gentle and considerate towards those close to her. Upon hearing that introduction, Sakita couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Akanabe felt misunderstood when Yao only referred to her as Akanabe's friend. She firmly denied it. With his hand under his chin in thought, he affirmed that their relationship was not simply a friendship, but a deep bond, forged from the time they had spent together throughout their college years. This confession delighted Yao, as it reassured her that their friendship truly mattered. Akanabe had never expressed his feelings so clearly before. However, Akanabe quickly shifted his attention to Sakita. She was still trying to process the situation. Yao found it hard to accept that someone could be closer to Akanabe than she was, even if it was a close and caring friend. Yao wanted to ensure Akanabe's safety and well-being, so she stared intently at Sakita. She asked him if he was serious about a relationship with Akanabe. Yao recalled the past when Akanabe had been surrounded by foolish men who only cared about her money. Many men were also only interested in Akanabe's beauty and appearance. For these reasons, Yao worried that Sakita might be that kind of person. Even though he knew he hadn't done anything wrong, Sakita felt uneasy, and he answered awkwardly with a hint of uncertainty. In the midst of the awkwardness, Akanabe spoke up, reminding everyone of the positive moments they had shared on their dates, such as Yao recalled one time when Sakita firmly refused to let Akanabe pay for his outfit. In the end, he paid for it himself. This led Yao to conclude that Sakita wasn't the type to seek financial gain from his girlfriend. Still reflecting on their dating experiences, Yao suddenly asked Sakita if they had ever held hands. Sakita admitted that they did that on their first date at home. Hearing this, Yao couldn't accept the idea and reproached Akanabe for not being self-aware enough to let Sakita hold her hand. However, Akanabe didn't consider this a big problem. She added that she also cared deeply about Sakita. And in fact, she had noticed him sometimes looking at her breasts, which made her confident that Sakita also had physical feelings for her. Yao felt embarrassed and found it difficult to accept what she had just heard. Although she realized Sakita wasn't a bad person, this was evident in Akanabe's clear expression when she spoke about him. Yao felt disappointed and defeated, as she now realized Akanabe had a boyfriend, which meant she would be spending more time with him, especially on Christmas Eve. Feeling frustrated, Yao threw down her coat and rushed out of the house. Sakita stood there, not knowing what to do, completely shocked by Yao's strange behavior and unable to understand her outburst. However, Yao's forceful attitude reminded him of the character Cherry in Crimson Witch, and he felt an urge to ask for her autograph because he was a fan of the series. After Yao left the house, Akanabe and Sakita rearranged the sofa back into its original position, as Yao had moved it earlier. At this point, Akanabe unexpectedly mentioned that Yao was the author of First Love in Tokyo. Sakita was astonished to hear this, as First Love in Tokyo was one of his favorite shoujo manga, thanks to its delicate and touching storyline that captivated him from the first time he read it. He could hardly believe that Yao was the author of his favorite manga, and what's more, she was Akanebe's best friend. In addition, Yao was the model for a character in Crimson Witch. What an incredible combination. Sakita desperately wanted Yao's autograph. But Sakita felt uncertain because the last time Yao left the house, she had clearly shown her dislike for him. However, Akanabe tried to reassure her boyfriend, confident that Yao would return soon to retrieve the jacket. And indeed, just a few minutes later, Yao returned to Akanabe's house, her body trembling with cold. She immediately asked for her coat back, and although she felt embarrassed and ashamed for running off so hastily, she eventually returned to retrieve it. With a caring attitude, Sakita offered her his coat and said he would make her a cup of tea to warm her up. However, Yao misunderstood his kindness. He thought he had feelings for her, even though she had acted quite coldly before. Yao firmly stated that she could not accept Sakita's feelings, as she would never betray her best friend. Although Sakita hadn't said anything to imply this, Yao still thought so. This startled Sakita, making him realize that Yao had completely misunderstood the situation. Meanwhile, Akanabe found the misunderstanding between them amusing. She understood that Sakita was a kind and caring person, but also realized that Yao had misinterpreted his intentions. Yao saw Akanabe smiling and concluded that Akanabe wouldn't mind if Sakita were interested in other girls, or even a polygamous relationship. Sakita felt uncomfortable and wanted to clarify the situation. So he decided to confess that he liked Yao, but not in a romantic way. Akanabe then clarified to avoid further misunderstanding. Akanabe explained that Sakita admired Yao as a fan, not with romantic feelings. However, instead of feeling happy to have a fan, Yao felt uncomfortable, as she didn't want to feel guilty that her best friend's boyfriend was also a fan of hers. She also asked Akanabe if she was okay with this. Surprisingly, Akanabe coldly replied that no matter who Sakita admired, his true feelings would always be for her. She added that, although Yao might steal Sakita, she would definitely bring him back to her. Both Yao and Sakita were surprised by this declaration. Afterward, Yao asked permission to speak further with Sakita. Finally, Akanabe agreed to let them chat, and Sakita eagerly began discussing Yao's manga, expressing his fondness for the work. Yao then shared her thoughts on how she inspired a character in Akanabe's manga. Akanabe frequently draws inspiration from real people when designing characters, which impressed Yao greatly, especially since the new character designed in Akanabe's manga is based on her boyfriend. As the conversation continued, Yao became excited and unintentionally touched Sakita's hand. However, shortly afterwards, Akanabe grabbed her hand and reminded Yao not to touch Sakita too much. Akanabe reminded Yao that she was the only one allowed to express physical affection to Sakita. Realizing her mistake, Yao immediately apologized to Akanabe, assuring him that she had no intention of crossing the line. After Akanabe and Sakita finished their work, Akanabe noticed something while reviewing his drawings. She had a feeling that her boyfriend was worried about something, although he tried to hide it. While drawing a tree, she directly asked him about it. However, Sakita insisted that it wasn't a big deal and that there was no need to bring it up. Sakita didn't want to worry her and decided to handle his own concerns. Akanabe frowned and pouted, feeling certain that Sakita was hiding something. She was also a little annoyed that he still called her sensei, even though their work was over. She reminded him that while calling her sensei was appropriate at work, this was their private time, and she felt it wasn't necessary to continue that way. For her, talking to her boyfriend was the most important thing. After some deep thought, Sakita finally decided to share his worries. He said he was having difficulty drawing the main character for the manga he intended to publish. Sakita felt that the main character he drew was not appealing at all. He felt the design was too complicated to draw, and wasn't sure if he could improve it. After listening to his concerns, Akanabe offered some suggestions, such as using real people as role models. However, she wasn't sure if this method would help him. She believes that creating space for the characters might be a better approach. She explains that creating this space for each character can help make them more interesting. By revealing aspects of their personality that contrast with their usual characteristics. For example, a unique character, often portrayed as bad, might have a big heart and love animals. Similarly, an ordinary girl who wears glasses might become beautiful when she takes them off. Akanabe believes this method will be effective if applied correctly. In addition, Akanabe revealed a different side of himself when he's at home, away from work. When Sakita wasn't around, she often felt anxious, and she would blush at the sweet gestures he made towards her. Just thinking about him made her feel flustered. However, she quickly reverted to her usual calm and composed demeanor. She felt that displaying such emotions would make her look silly and immature. Furthermore, she felt that acting cute might cause her boyfriend to lose interest. Therefore, she prefers more mature and sensible actions. Because she was older and wanted to become the ideal sensei that Sakita admired, she didn't want to show any feelings of embarrassment or shame, so she chose to keep those emotions to herself. Akanabe further explained that creating space for the characters can make them more appealing, while also highlighting their endearing aspects. After some thought, Sakita agreed that applying the technique of creating empty spaces in character design could be helpful, and decided to experiment with it to solve the problem with his main character. While listening to Akanebe's explanation, Sakita felt a little flustered when he encountered a cute side of her. As she became shy, he couldn't hide his admiration for her beauty, and finally confessed his feelings. Akanabe also acknowledged this, realizing that Sakita easily became embarrassed by compliments. Eventually, Sakita was able to speak honestly when he wanted to convey something. This made Akanabe like him even more. Finally, the day she had been waiting for arrived. Valentine's Day. As the holiday approached, Akanabe decided to make some sweet chocolates for Sakita herself. To help with this, she invited Sakura, her best friend, and also a skilled cook to teach her. She also invited Kakami to join in. Akanabe invited her personal editor to be the tester for the chocolates. The cooking competition took place outside her house, where Akanabe found a safe space to prepare these sweet treats. This was the first time Yao had the opportunity to meet the editor by Akanabe, and she was quite surprised to learn that Akanabe had chosen his own editor to be the chocolate taster. Akanabe felt uncertain about this decision. Akanabe recalled how terrible she used to be at cooking and how she ruined everything during her college years. However, despite her past failures, Akanabe still wanted her editor to be the test subject for this cooking attempt. Akanabe had carefully considered this decision, hoping to have a test subject who wouldn't make her feel guilty about the dishes she prepared. After a while, Kakami approached, stopping in front of Akanabe and Yao, but keeping her distance. She called out to Akanabe and asked if any games would be organized, knowing Akanabe wasn't interested in such things. Kakami realized this and unexpectedly picked up the microphone, beginning to sing spontaneously. Yao immediately understood why Akanabe had chosen her to be the chocolate taster. Because Kakami has a rather eccentric personality, therefore, choosing Yao as a cooking instructor was a great decision. Yao already had experience making handmade chocolate, and they both donned aprons, getting ready to begin. Before starting, Akanabe told Yao that she wanted to create chocolates that would make Sakita love her even more, make him hold her tightly and never want to let go, all with just one bite. Akanabe said this with a cute expression, but deep down she knew that such an outcome was unlikely. Even with Kakami as the test subject, this was their first attempt, and the results could be disastrous. However, all three understood the potential risks. Finally, they decided to make chocolate truffles. First, they cut a chocolate bar into small pieces and put them in a bowl. Next, they poured in the heated fresh cream and stirred until the mixture reached a smooth and creamy consistency. Everything went smoothly until they were almost finished. At the final step, everything suddenly came to a halt. They leave the mixture in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes to let it solidify, making it easier to shape later. According to Yao's plan while waiting, they decided to take a short break. At that moment, Akanabe unexpectedly pulled out a cigarette and started smoking. Yao, surprised, thought Akanabe had quit smoking a long time ago. However, Akanabe explained that she had quit while at home because she didn't want to affect Sakita's health with cigarette smoke, and she also believed that smoking could shorten his lifespan. Yao understood her best friend's feelings and said nothing more, deciding not to criticize Akanabe for this. Because they still needed to wait for the chocolate powder to solidify, Yao tried to get some sleep. But the plan backfired and they had to wait another hour. When they woke up, the truffles were no longer shaped as originally intended. Yao felt disappointed, believing she had ruined everything. Akanabe explained that she hesitated to wake Yao up, fearing she would upset her, so she decided to handle everything herself. However, she also shared her disappointment, because truffles have also failed. Kakami, the tester who seemed quite confused, as she prepared to sample the failed truffles, her expression betrayed surprise and anxiety. However, she still insisted that they tasted pretty good. After a few trials, Akanabe finally succeeded in shaping and decorating the truffles perfectly. She was pleased with the result and confident that these chocolates would be a sweet gift for Sakita on Valentine's Day. Time passed and Valentine's Day approached. For Sakita, it was a sweet surprise to receive handmade chocolates from his girlfriend. Akanabe proudly stated that Yao had helped her prepare these chocolates, and they were especially meaningful because they contained her love for Sakita. Sakita's face flushed, touched by this sweet gesture. Without hesitation, Akanabe encouraged him to eat the chocolates before they melted. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Kakami received a box of chocolates from her best friend. However, she couldn't hide her confusion and slight trauma when recalling her role as a tester for Akanabe's chocolates in the past. Outside, it was raining, the sky gloomier than usual. Although it was still working hours, Akanabe and Sakita sat in the same room, engrossed in their manga project. Sakita began to tell a horror story inspired by a true event about a mangaka who specialized in drawing horror manga. The story follows a manga artist who meticulously draws the girl with a slit mouth, a haunting character with a widely slit mouth. He dedicates every day to drawing this girl. However, Sakita paused midway, not revealing the ending. He wondered if this was why people often say that artistic creation is like giving birth to the truth. Akanabe, who was listening to the story, she pouted and looked annoyed, clearly showing her discomfort with the content of the story. Nevertheless, she still tried to listen attentively to her boyfriend. When Sakita finally realized her feelings, he immediately apologized profusely, but Akanabe reassured him that she was simply uncomfortable with some of the things he said, because in truth, she wasn't angry with him at all. This fact made Sakita feel guilty about what she had told him. He didn't really understand why his girlfriend disliked that kind of story. To ease the tension, Akanabe feigned indifference and jokingly said he could tell her 100 ghost stories if he wanted. She declared that her short-term memory ensured she would immediately forget what he had just said. This only made Sakita feel more guilty. He felt he had failed in both roles as her assistant and her boyfriend. Akanabe then awkwardly recounted the story about the zombies, which Sakita had told her about before. Sakita wasn't sure if she had truly forgotten the story, but he explained that zombies don't actually exist. Even if they were real, he would find a way to defeat them. However, memories of the zombies and the Red Witch suddenly flooded back, making him hesitate. The zombies in that movie were not only incredibly strong, but also up to 3 meters tall, and could even shoot bullets from their hands. While they were talking, a sudden loud clap of thunder rang out, and the lights abruptly went out. Akanabe immediately spoke up in a trembling voice, muttering whether this was the end for them, and they will be killed by zombies. Sakita quickly grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight. The light immediately shone on Akanabe, who was sitting slumped on the floor, looking terrified. He swallowed hard, for this was the first time he had seen her reveal such a vulnerable side. Without hesitation, he rushed to her side, embracing her tightly to offer her warmth and comfort. He constantly reassured her that she would be safe with him by her side, because he would always protect her. This was the first time Sakita had hugged Akanabe, and it filled him with guilt. However, he also realized that he just wanted to do this at the right time. After a few minutes, the power was restored, causing them to instinctively let go of each other. Akanabe, fully aware of the moment that had just passed, gently requested another hug, saying that she still wasn't satisfied. However, Sakita became embarrassed and felt awkward after her confession. When he turned back to look at the computer screen, Sakita was surprised to remember that they hadn't backed up their data before the power outage. One beautiful morning, Sakita had just woken up and was preparing breakfast when he received a call from Akanabe-sensei. She asked about his mother's favorite food. Without hesitation, Sakita replied that his mother's favorite dish was miso soup. Curious about why she asked, he asked again. To his surprise, Akanabe revealed that his mother was visiting her house. He heard his mother whispering softly in the background. Realizing this, Sakita quickly hung up the phone, changed his clothes, and rushed to Akanabe's house. He walked into the room feeling tired. From a distance, he saw his mother and girlfriend chatting animatedly. As he got closer, he heard Akanabe-sensei praising him and discussing his talents. She kept praising him in front of his mother, which his mother seemed skeptical but also very enthusiastic. When his mother noticed his presence, she turned around, still full of enthusiasm, and immediately greeted him warmly. Without hesitation, Sakita asked her how she knew about the Akanabe family and what her purpose was in coming here. A broad smile spread across his mother's wrinkled face as she confessed that she had sent a fan letter stating that she was Sakita's mother. Soon after, she received a reply with her address. Sakita felt embarrassed, for he fully understood the situation. His mother recounted that Akanabe-sensei welcomed her visits anytime. Meanwhile, Akanabe-sensei expressed his desire to speak with the mother of such a talented son as Sakita. Touched by the compliment, Sakita's mother felt embarrassed, but instead of praising her son, she said she wasn't sure she had done a good job raising him. And instead of complimenting him, she thanked Akanabe-sensei for bringing life to her son. Upon hearing that conversation, Sakita felt guilty and wanted to clarify his feelings, as he didn't entirely agree with his mother's point of view. However, he was interrupted when his mother firmly cut him off, telling him not to interrupt their conversation and to prepare himself for some embarrassment. After a moment of silence, Akanabe-sensei asked Sakita's mother why she felt grateful to her. Sakita's mother sighed and began to tell a long story. She explained that her husband had passed away long ago, and she had to raise her children alone. Despite the difficulties of balancing work and family, she unexpectedly realized that Sakita always understood their situation and offered her immense support. When Sakita was about to speak up and refute what his mother had just said, Sakita's mother continued to express how fortunate she was to have raised such a wonderful son. She recalled a parent-teacher meeting where Sakita expressed his desire to enter the workforce. His mother was surprised, as he had always loved drawing since he was a child. She advised him to study art and design at university, But Sakita explained that drawing was just a hobby for him. The most important thing to him was his mother's happiness, and he wanted her to be able to enjoy life instead of having to work hard to pay for his tuition. After working for a while, Sakita faced his mother with a serious expression and said that he wanted to become a manga artist. He told his mother about a new manga he had read, one that had captivated him, and inspired me to improve my drawing skills and create my own manga. When he discovered that the author he admired was looking for an assistant, Sakita decided to move to Tokyo to pursue this opportunity. Even though he knew he would earn little money and live alone in the beginning, before he could finish his sentence, his mother hugged him tightly, moved and grateful for having him in her life. His mother reassured Sakita that he could choose his own path without worrying about her interference. She realized that her son had grown up well under Akanabe-sensei's guidance. She regarded her as a savior and expressed her sincere gratitude. However, Akanabe-sensei insisted that she was the one who needed to thank him. After overhearing the conversation between her mother and Akanabe-sensei, Sakita felt he couldn't sit still any longer. He excused himself to go to the restroom. Sakita was deeply moved by his mother's words and Akanabe-sensei's. He tried to suppress his emotions, but his heart was heavy. After a while, he returned to the room, only to find his mother telling strange stories about his childhood, saying things that were quite inappropriate. Sakita was taken aback, as he couldn't believe his mother could change the subject so easily, shifting from a sweet atmosphere to such a bizarre one. His mother felt embarrassed about her jokes, but Sakita immediately suspected that she might have told such stories to others. Sakita felt very ashamed that Akanabe had to hear such awkward stories about his childhood. However, Akanabe didn't see it that way. She genuinely enjoyed listening to her boyfriend's childhood stories, finding them interesting and amusing. Sakita sighed, wanting her to hear only ordinary stories about him. When Akanabe called Sakita boyfriend in front of his mother, she was startled, and the atmosphere became more awkward than ever. Time passed. Sakita's mother was getting ready to leave home, and he took her to the train station. Before she boarded the ship, his mother reminded him to take good care of Akanabe, saying that Sakita was just like his father. Sakita's mother advised him not to keep a girl waiting too long, implying that he needed to understand and care about her feelings. This reminder made Sakita realize that he had kept Akanabe waiting too long. Determined to change, he promised himself that he would kiss her on their next date. It had been a long time since he'd had an outdoor date, and even though it was only early morning, they planned to spend the whole day together. As he strolled along, his mother's words kept echoing in his head. This made Sakita feel frustrated and self-reproachful for not being good enough as a boyfriend. He realized that despite dating for a while, their relationship hadn't progressed much. His awkwardness seemed to be the main reason he was in this situation. Suddenly, Akanabe took his hand and expressed her happiness at holding the hand of the person she loved most. Her bright smile radiated positive energy, making it difficult for Sakita to control his emotions. She looked cuter and more beautiful than ever in his eyes. As they walked together, Sakita was lost in thought, worried about how to initiate the kiss. He feared he would be clumsy or too shy. However, he knew that if he kept dwelling on it, nothing would change. He was determined to kiss her today. On their first date, they visited an aquarium. As they walked around the tank, Sakita suddenly spoke up, saying it had been a long time since he'd visited. He spoke with excitement, as if he had rediscovered the joy of the past. They both happily strolled around, enjoying their time together. Akanabe revealed that she really enjoys going to the aquarium, even though she doesn't know all the different types of fish, but every time she goes, she feels relaxed and comfortable. She also admitted that visiting the aquarium with her boyfriend was a precious moment for Akanabe. Just having Sakita by her side was enough to make her happy. This made Sakita love her even more deeply, and he thought this might be the perfect time to give her a kiss. On the other hand, Akanabe felt the same way and silently waited for him to be the one to take the initiative. However, Sakita was too embarrassed to do that right now and decided not to act. They continued walking until they came across two whales kissing each other. Sakita considered taking advantage of this opportunity to make his bold move, but in his mind, he decided against it. He felt like a failure. They had spent time together at the aquarium, but there had been no progress in their relationship. He suggested they find a place to sit and rest. Feeling guilty for their lack of progress, they finally arrived at the Ferris wheel. Sakita hoped he would muster enough courage to kiss Akanabe while they were sitting in the cabin. They sat opposite each other in the Ferris wheel cabin. Akanabe remarked that this was the perfect place to share a kiss. Sakita was surprised. He hadn't expected her to have figured out his intentions all this time. Seeing his confusion, Akanabe thought that Sakita probably wanted to keep this a secret, and she felt a little embarrassed for having inadvertently revealed it. She couldn't deny that she had sensed his intentions from the moment they met. At that moment, Sakita apologized for making her wait, although she reassured him that it wasn't a big deal and she was still willing to wait. She confessed that just his attempt to kiss her made her feel like she was floating on the moon all day. Her sincere confession filled Sakita's heart with emotion, and he felt a strong urge. He wanted to get closer to her. They looked into each other's eyes with gentle and sincere gazes. He gently tilted his head and kissed her, connect emotionally with them in a delicate embrace. The next morning, Sakita woke up to the sound of the alarm clock indicating it was already 7 a.m. Unfortunately, it was a bad morning for him because he had a cold. After informing Akanabe-sensei that he couldn't come to work because he was sick, she immediately showed concern. She asked if he had taken his medicine, if he had eaten properly, and if he felt any better. However, Sakita was more worried about Akanabe, knowing that she would have to handle the work and the script alone. Nevertheless, Akanabe reassured him that she would finish everything quickly so she could visit him and take care of him in the afternoon. After finishing her projects, Akanabe rushed out to buy the things Sakita needed and quickly went to his apartment. Akanabe arrived at Sakita's house at 1 p.m. Finally, I get to meet him in person. Feeling guilty for causing her worry by preventing her from going to work, Sakita quickly apologized. Akanabe interrupted him, gently assuring him that she was there only to take care of him and make him feel comfortable. She began preparing various dishes for him. Meanwhile, Sakita was unable to think clearly. He was both thrilled to see his girlfriend and felt dizzy and embarrassed standing in front of her. He said he wanted to take a shower and clean up first, but Akanabe stopped him. She told him to lie down and rest in bed because he was still sick. A little while later, Akanabe brought him a bowl of rice porridge that she had just cooked. Sakita ate ravenously and felt noticeably healthier. Surprisingly, Akanabe made a delicious porridge, despite her previous mishaps in the kitchen. This made her breathe a sigh of relief because everything had gone smoothly. After finishing his meal, Sakita lay down and tried to sleep, but suddenly felt something strange. When he opened his eyes, he saw Akanabe leaning closer. She rested her forehead against his, allowing him to clearly feel the warmth of their closeness. She quickly sat up straight, causing Sakita to blush and shyly tell her not to get so close, otherwise he would die of embarrassment. Although they had kissed before, he still felt flustered, revealing his true, reserved personality. Sakita confessed that being with her made him feel like he was living in a dream. In response, Akanabe asked him what he would wish for if this moment were truly a dream. After a moment of thought, he replied that he wanted a thigh pillow. Akanabe happily fulfilled that simple request. She gently sat down, placed Sakita's head on her lap, and began to softly stroke his hair to comfort him. In his weakened state, Sakita felt a mixture of pleasure, warmth, and softness. But when she became aware of the situation, the embarrassment returned. This made him even more agitated, worried that his illness might worsen because of it. Akanabe gently stated that fulfilling his request was no big deal to her, and that she was willing to do it whenever he wanted. These words only deepened Sakita's feelings for her. He confessed how much he loved her, and how grateful he was for her coming into his life, before slowly drifting off to sleep. This moment made Akanabe's heart race. He urged her to secretly plant a kiss on his lips. However, she stopped when she realized Sakita wouldn't be happy if she caught a cold from kissing him right now. Therefore, she decided to postpone the kiss until he had fully recovered. On a beautiful day, everyone continued to focus on working hard to pursue their lives, including Horato Chie. Horato Chie, a 19-year-old girl, is currently working part-time at Mountain Cafe. While washing the glasses, she pondered whether she should quit her job. Surprisingly, she didn't encounter any major problems that would make quitting necessary. Everything is fine, and she really enjoys her job here. The customers were all very pleasant, and the aroma of the coffee beans was incredibly alluring. And the coffee brewed by the manager was surprisingly delicious. However, there's a reason why Chie wants to quit her job. One of the cafe's regulars was a beautiful, elegant woman who always visited on weekends. Akanabe Akira, the author of Crimson Witch, possessed a graceful beauty and refined manners that gave her a divine, almost goddess-like aura. Horato Chie, a huge fan of Crimson Witch, he couldn't hide his excitement at seeing his favorite author appear at the cafe. At that moment, as Akanabe was about to pay for the coffee, she accidentally saw the manager of the restaurant. She would politely express how delicious his coffee was. Chie felt delighted whenever her friends mentioned Akanabe's elegance, and she always joined in those conversations, even exaggerating her admiration for the famous author. Every time Akanabe visited the cafe, Chie would quietly observe, feeling a simple joy at being near her. Chie never misses an opportunity to attend Akanabe's autograph sessions. Although her admiration for the author was immense, but she still couldn't stop thinking that she didn't deserve to be a fan. Chie always felt that there was someone more deserving than her to be a true Akanabe fan, someone far superior to her. This thought continued until a day she never wanted to happen. Akanabe visited Mountain Cafe again, but this time she didn't come alone. She usually came to the cafe with her boyfriend. When Chie saw them together, she was startled, as if her heart had been struck by lightning. However, she remained calm and observed from a distance. The manager wondered why, as this was the first time Akanabe had brought anyone along. Meanwhile, Chie noticed Sakita. Akanabe's boyfriend seemed completely unfazed by the presence of such a literary icon. How could he remain so composed and calm, Even in the face of Akanebe's charisma, Chie wondered if he was really her boyfriend or just an editor. She found him fascinating, and that only fueled her desire to quit her job. While the manager prepared the finest coffee for Akanabe and her boyfriend, Chie carefully brought the drinks to their table, serving them quickly and professionally. She returned to the staff table, still keeping her eyes on them. Akanabe excitedly shared her thoughts about the cafe, from the space and atmosphere to the rich flavor of the coffee. Sakura responded with the same enthusiasm while sipping her coffee and savoring its rich taste. Seeing Akanabe smiling so happily, Chie felt a sharp pang of jealousy, but I also felt a deep sense of happiness for Akanabe. She looked genuinely happy bringing her boyfriend to this restaurant, with a sweet expression on her face. That struck Chie like a bolt of lightning, because Akanabe looked even cuter when he smiled. She insisted that the man was definitely her boyfriend because she could behave so naturally and sincerely. As Chie walked past them, Akanabe whispered, sharing that she also liked going to Mountain Cafe because the waitress there was a fan who had attended her first autograph session. She admitted that every time she saw the waitress enjoying her job at the restaurant, she felt more productive. Chie overheard it and immediately felt embarrassed upon hearing her favorite author praise her work too much. Chie began reconsidering her plans to quit. She changed her mind and told the manager that she wanted to continue working at Mountain Cafe in the near future. She felt exhilarated by the emotions she had experienced that day. After a long and tiring day, Sakita and Akanabe finished work when suddenly Yao appeared, bringing a variety of different drinks. She invited them both to join her for a drink to ease the fatigue they had both felt throughout the day. Sakita was a little surprised, as he didn't expect Yao to be able to enter Akanabe's house so easily with the spare key she had. However, Sakita didn't feel any jealousy. Akanabe seemed to misunderstand his feelings and offered him a spare key. Sakita politely declined, his cheeks flushing slightly with embarrassment. Noticing their playful banter, Yao felt annoyed and began to grumble. After a few light-hearted arguments, they finally sat down to drink. Luckily, Yao had brought some non-alcoholic options, allowing Sakita to join in the fun with everyone. Yao looked radiant and full of life as she enjoyed her drink. It had been a long time since she'd had a chance to drink with friends. Meanwhile, Sakita stood up and excused himself to prepare a snack for everyone. Yao teases Akanabe, suggesting that Sakita enjoys spending time in his girlfriend's kitchen. Akanabe quickly warns Yao that only she could see Sakita that way. After a while of drinking, all three began to feel the effects of the alcohol. Yao leaned her head on the table, softly muttering about the tension from her family, who were pressuring her to get married soon or find a boyfriend because she felt she was getting older. Yao understood her family's good intentions, but the constant reminders made her feel pressured, and that's why she sought refuge by going to Akanabe's house. Sakita, who was listening, realized that Yao simply wanted to escape the tension. Akanabe, who also felt slightly tipsy like Yao, he immediately joined the conversation and praised Yao. She admitted that she really enjoyed Yao's visits and cooking lessons, expressing gratitude for Yao's presence in her life. Those sincere words truly lifted Yao's spirits. Yao commented that these bonding moments, this seems to only happen when Akanabe is drunk. She even said that Sakita could rely on her whenever he was in trouble. However, Yao was the first to fall asleep without realizing that Akanabe was quite drunk. At that time, Akanabe was lying unconscious. She rested her head on Sakita's chest, held his hand, and murmured about how much she enjoyed holding his hand. Akanabe held Sakita tightly, inhaling his scent until she drifted off to sleep. Sakita's heart raced. He felt her warmth beside him. This was a precious moment for him. Finally, Sakita realized it was time to go home and asked Akanabe for permission. However, she refused to let him go and asked for another hug. He felt he needed to go home early to prepare for the next day, but found himself in an awkward situation, trying to find an excuse to leave as he was also feeling a little dizzy. Suddenly, Sakita came up with an idea to convince Akanabe. He said that if he stayed overnight there, Yao might accidentally sleep next to him. Reluctantly, Akanabe allowed him to leave on one day of the week. It is unclear when Akanabe's younger sister will arrive. She is Saya, a freshman in college. Saya is very energetic and cheerful, especially when she's with her older sister. However, Akanabe often quickly gets tired and has to stop playing with Saya to rest. Sometimes she had to bother her boyfriend. A little while later, Sakita arrived at Akanabe's house, and seeing her dressed cutely, drenched in sweat, Akanabe apologized for asking Sakita to come on his day off. She explained that she needed help taking care of her younger sister. She felt exhausted and hoped Sakita could help. Saya approached him with a cheerful expression and a self-introduction. Akanabe also spoke up, saying that his sister is very enthusiastic about sports. Saya once participated in a national swimming competition, and whenever she gets excited about sports, she won't stop until she achieves her desired result. Furthermore, because she's so young, Saya doesn't remember to rest when playing sports. Seeing my girlfriend, I'm exhausted. Sakita accepted the challenge of playing with Saya without hesitation. However, after a short time, he collapsed exhausted and forgot that he wasn't used to strenuous exercise. Meanwhile, Saya remained full of energy. She playfully remarked that Sakita was inferior to her older sister, and bluntly stated that he would never be able to keep up with Akanabe. Saya explained that the people who are important to her need to be healthy, at least until he's 120 years old. Because Sakita is important to her older sister, he's also very important to her. She recounted that she had read that manga artists who lack exercise and sleep tend to have shorter lifespans, and she didn't want that to happen to the people she cared about. Hearing this, Akanabe finally understood why his younger sister wanted to play with him. Saya wanted her sister to be more active so she could live a long and healthy life, avoiding illness and disease easily. Saya admitted that she believes that playing and having fun while exercising helps prevent illness. Akanabe hugged his younger sister tightly, thanking her for her concern. The two sisters promised to exercise more in the future so Saya wouldn't have to worry about them. Excited, Saya invited them both to play again. However, neither Sakita nor Akanabe's bodies could withstand it. The next morning, they found themselves unable to move more than a meter due to muscle aches. It was pitiful that they were in so much pain after just one day of fun exercise. Today is the release date of Akanabe's new manga volume, Crimson Witch. Akanabe was overjoyed, especially after receiving so much positive feedback from readers. Seeing her boyfriend Sakita happy about it made her even happier. Sakita couldn't hide his excitement. He bought 20 copies of the comic book. Akanabe said she could just send him one copy, but he insisted on buying it out of respect for his favorite author. Before work begins, he took advantage of the time to read the manga I just bought. While concentrating on a page of a comic book, he suddenly noticed one of his illustrations in the background. He marked it to remind himself that he could improve. Suddenly, Akanabe just confessed how much she loved him, leaving Sakita completely surprised and embarrassed. She explained that it was humility that mattered. That's one of the things she loves about him. Recalling the first time she hired him, Akanabe admitted that at the time she wasn't sure if she needed anyone's help with her manga. However, she knew this was necessary because Sakita always strived for high quality. When she looked back at his work, she didn't expect too much, but when she saw the background paintings he had created, she was truly impressed, thinking that the background paintings he drew were amazing and perfectly suited to her manga. Akanabe couldn't believe his talent. Over time, Sakita dedicated himself to improving and developing his drawing skills, always maintaining a humble attitude even when receiving praise from his teacher. It was then that Akanabe realized she could truly trust him. Sakita listened to the confession of her. He still retains Sakita's humility, sincerity, kindness, and passion for manga. This only made Akanabe love him even more. She said that if she could date him, she would be the happiest person in the world. Final, he made her feel extremely happy when she gave him sincere compliments. Sakita felt ashamed and overwhelmed by her praise. In his free time, Akanabe often hangs out with his younger sister, Akanabe Saya. It had been a long time since they had a date, so Saya looked happier today as she strolled down the street with her sister. Saya came up with the idea of inviting her sister to the cafe they had visited last time, just to have some pudding. However, when we were halfway there, she caught Sakita with another girl. Initially, Saya thought the girl might be a member of Sakita's family, but when asked Akanabe, knowing that Sakita was an only child, she began to suspect that Sakita might be deceiving her older sister. This came as a big surprise to her, as she had tried to convince her sister to only pay attention to him and not look at her boyfriend from afar. Saya really wanted to protect her sister, and when Saya saw Sakita and the other girl entering the cafe she was planning to go to, she was startled and immediately asked her sister to turn back and change their plans. However, Akanabe ignored the advice and decided to go into the cafe with Saya anyway. As they entered, Akanabe easily recognized from Saya's expression that her younger sister was clearly hiding something, and she was looking at her with a worried expression. Akanabe unexpectedly asked, "You're worried about me, aren't you? I don't want you to worry about me like you did last time." Hearing Akanabe's question, Saya felt guilty and stood up, walking straight towards Sakita. Suddenly, Saya appeared in front of Sakita and immediately asked, "Who is this girl? The one you were hanging out with?" Meanwhile, the other girl was startled and quietly asked Sakita again. Curious about who the girl in front of them was, Saya felt very annoyed and spoke up, questioning why he had betrayed her sister. The tension and misunderstanding between them intensified. Sakita was shocked to hear Saya suspect him of deceiving her sister. Sakita tried to explain that the girl was Chie, an employee from Akanabe's favorite cafe. Akanabe, understanding the awkward situation, unexpectedly appeared. Her appearance startled Harado. When my favorite author, it suddenly appeared in front of me. Akanabe immediately spoke up to explain, saying that she was the one who had asked Sakita to accompany Chie. She said that since last night, When Crimson Witch's pin button was released, Sakita had difficulty collecting them. Meanwhile, Akanabe noticed that Chie also had that battery, so she arranged this meeting for both Sakita and Chie. Although Sakita tried to refuse, Akanabe persuaded him to accept. In the end, he had no other choice. After hearing the explanation, Saya immediately apologized to her sister for suspecting Sakita of deceiving her, and she felt remorseful for creating this misunderstanding and trouble. Akanabe immediately and sincerely stated that she had never worried about being deceived, because she was the only one Sakita loved most. Similarly, Sakita was the only one Akanabe loved most, so no one will have a chance to come between them. Finally, all misunderstandings were cleared up, and there were no more misunderstandings.